so focus on the life that you want and how a job supports that, instead of reaching out for a job and hoping that that's going to give you the life that you want.
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Eagle, I am so excited today. I'm chatting with Jason Roncoroni, a 21-year U.S. Army veteran. He went to West Point, had a distinguished career as a commander in the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Combat Aviation Brigade. Lives down in Florida. Also, when he got out of the military, he has been a really successful leadership development and coaching professional. So working with a lot of companies across the country and executives to bring the best qualities of the military into the civilian society. And he even authored a book called Beyond the Military, a leader's handbook for warrior reintegration. So Jason, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat and share your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jordy. I really appreciate being here. Thanks.
Awesome. Tell everyone a little bit about your military experience and in the Army and what you got out of that, what you learned, and how that set you on your career path.
Sure. So I came from a family who didn't really know very much about the military. And I joined for 2 reasons. First reason was that I wanted some excitement. And the second reason was I needed an alternative to pay for college. Mm-hmm. So that's how it started. I never intended for it to last as long as it did. And I guess along the way, I figured that I felt the military experience was remarkably fulfilling. I served as an aviation officer, so I got to fly, and I was in units all over the country. And the reason why I wrote the book was because I didn't have one transition experience from the military. I had 2. I left the Army as a junior officer back around the turn of the century, which now even makes me sound older as I hear myself say that. And then my second transition was when I retired after battalion level command. And so I got more out of the military than I ever expected. It was a wonderful experience with a lot of amazing people. But the reason why I wrote the book was because I really had 2 shots at doing this, and I didn't do it well either time.
Well, that's great that you recognize that, and you said, hey, if I'm struggling maybe with some of this stuff and this reintegration, that maybe I can share those experiences and help the guys come in behind me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there was a lot of different ways of potentially putting this together. And I spoken to my partner, Dr. Shauna Springer, who has done a lot of work in the veteran space. Typically, as a psychologist, she deals more with trauma-related events, but her specialty was in relationships. And when I left the military the first time, I was a single guy. But when I left the second time, I had a wife, I had 2 kids. And I think I completely underestimated the impact that leaving the lifestyle that for my kids was the only one that they had ever known, leaving that lifestyle and going back into society. And so she was able to really help with a big part of that and framing out all those aspects of how do we capture some of the best lessons learned in a language that military leaders would understand, so that as they go through this process, they would have a greater sense of confidence.
Yeah. What do you feel makes a veteran such a great civilian worker?
Well, there's a lot of things, but probably the greatest thing that I think makes a veteran a great civilian worker is the can-do attitude that military veterans typically have, where I think a lot of, when you look at civilian businesses, like if I go to school to be an engineer, I'm going to graduate from college, I'm going to get a degree as an engineer. And then I'm going to work as an engineer, as an intern or apprenticeship for several years. Then I'm going to be a professional engineer. And at some point, if I'm a successful engineer, I'll be given the opportunity to manage other engineers. Well, the military experience is different. They don't work on that functional or professional identity. They develop your leader identity. And from the first day that you show up at basic training or throughout your officer commissioning source, the focus is that regardless of the situation, you're going to show up and have the character-based qualities of an effective leader. And so the position doesn't really matter. And so that's what's unique. So when you hire a veteran, you're getting somebody that regardless of what position you put them in, they're going to show up with all the high quality attributes of an effective leader.
Yeah, I buy that, and probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of training put into that each of those veterans to make them that effective.
Yeah, it's all of that. And you know, the veteran will go through a bunch of different jobs throughout their career, and every job that they're presented with, the first time that they've ever known anything about that role or responsibility is when they were assigned to it.
Yeah.
And so they have to really rely, it creates a remarkable sense of self-awareness. It helps them to trust the people around them to help them be successful. And so in terms of team building, understanding self-reliance, and really that process of continuous learning, veterans are very adaptive for all of those qualities.
Yeah. What do you, there's, you know, there's so many veterans who are either unemployed right now, they're underemployed, maybe they're getting out, they're scared, they don't know what to do next, how to make this transition. What are some of your favorite tips, strategies for these men and women who are trying to get their career back on track or get it started?
So first off, the fear of transition is very normal.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter whether you served one term of enlistment or you're retiring after 30 years. It is normal to have that very uncomfortable feeling. And the reason why you experience it is most veterans join at a very young age, really when they're at the burgeoning age of adulthood. And so much of their adult life has been shaped, and their psyche has been shaped through the military experience. So understanding that is normal.
Right.
And so the first thing I would say is that it's normal to feel uncomfortable as you're in this space. The second thing that I would recommend is you have to look at the entirety of your life in the transition experience, because the military, it's not just a job, you know, the way the commercials were a long time ago. You know, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a job, it's an adventure and all those things that they used to say in the recruiting videos. And it's true, it is more than the job. And so focus on the life that you want and how a job supports that, instead of reaching out for a job and hoping that that's going to give you the life that you want.
Yeah.
And in my experience, and this is what I did, I focused on going out and getting a job, had a certain title, had a certain salary. And the assumption that I made is that the life that I wanted would somehow magically appear. And I was focused on the wrong thing. So the best advice, if anybody was ever asking for any advice from me, would be focus on the life that you want and then get the job that supports that.
How did you know when you mentioned you took that first job and you were excited, but it wasn't necessarily the good fit, which you learned later on? How did you navigate that part and say, no, I really need to be doing something else? When did that come to you?
Well, so it was a bunch of different factors. I realized it very quickly.
Hmm.
I was about 2 months into the job and I was miserable. And it was a high paying job. I worked as a manufacturing engineer for a prominent company. And, but I got hired in at the highest level that they could hire me with my level of education and experience. So I'd be stuck in that job for several years. And what I started to do was I started to go back to school for, to get a master's degree so that I can really widen my aperture of opportunities. And what happened was, this is all about the time of early 2001 when the dot-com bubble burst.
Yeah.
When the dot-com bubble burst, they laid off 20, 30,000 employees, myself included. And so I had this longer vision plan of, hey, go back to school, start networking and figure things out. And all of that got hijacked by the fact that I got laid off. And it was during a time when, nobody was going to hire. They certainly weren't hiring any engineers at that point.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to reach out to a bunch of mentors of mine and really talk about, hey, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. Wasn't really sure how I was going to do it. And the idea I had at the time is that I'll go fly for the Coast Guard, which I couldn't do because when I resigned my commission, I was in the inactive ready reserve, which meant that I had to get a service transfer from the Army to the Coast Guard. And in the process of starting that, reaching out to old mentors, that's when I started to have actual conversations about what it is that I really wanted. And I made an assumption, entirely based on immaturity, that life was going to be better on the other side.
Yeah.
The military was holding me back. And it was just a very myopic and immature attitude that I had. And thankfully, these mentors were able to really help me and help me see that, look, my best path was to go back in the military and, quite frankly, to have a better attitude about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And then the second time, I thought that if I was just hanging out if I did something that sounded like what I did in the military and I was still working with military people, I would be fine. And that wasn't the case. And again, I had to resign from a job, and I found myself in that spot of where I'm sitting at a computer and I didn't want to fill out another resume and I didn't have the energy to do another cover letter. And that's when I started asking myself, what do I really want to do? Yeah. How do I really want to make a difference? Yeah. And that was really the first time that I started doing that in a non-military context. And so for me, it was a long journey. Yeah. And that's the reason why I wrote the book, was so that hopefully for other people, because over a 3-year period between both transitions, I had 8 different jobs.
Wow.
And I wanted that to be a better experience for men and women who were transitioning out of the service now. Yeah. And so that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, you've dedicated so much of your life to helping your brothers and sisters in arms, and I know you did a lot of great work with suicide prevention. And like, what encouraged you to give back in such a way and do so much for so many?
Well, it seems like it might seem like a selfless path. But I define my purpose as inspiring leaders to bridge the gap between confidence and potential. And it does help others, but this is my purpose. And so I'm living with that intention that this is what I'm out here to do. And these are the ways of which I'm going about doing it. And so It may come off as selfless, but honestly, it really is. This is what I find fulfilling personally.
Yeah, well, you're being modest. You're helping a lot of people too, and we sincerely appreciate that. What do you like to do in your free time? What do you have any hobbies, interests when you're not working?
Well, I'm an avid Philadelphia Eagles fan, which right now is not a good thing to do. I love going to the beach.
Yeah.
I love listening to music. Um, I body surf with my kids in the ocean, and I really enjoy doing that.
That's the best.
I enjoy comic book movies. I'm a Star Wars geek, so
How far are you from the beach now in Florida?
about a 15-minute drive.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, Jason, I can't thank you enough. This was awesome chatting with you, and I appreciate you sharing your story and giving some quick tips and advice for everyone. Everyone, please check out Beyond the Military. It's on Amazon, and there's some awesome tips and suggestions in there for you. So, thank you very much, Jason.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you having me on today.